Soybean Management Field Days, hosted by Nebraska Extension and the Nebraska Soybean Board, took place across the state of Nebraska in August, and one of the stops was in between Ulysses and Gresham. And Scott Richert, a farmer in the area, hosted one of the locations. Scott, thanks for hosting us, first of all. And you spend a lot of time looking at biologicals, cover crops, things like that. Maybe just on, I guess, thoughts, your principle. Why are you experimenting or doing some of your own trials in these different areas?
I've been in seed corn, growing seed corn for a lot of years, and I was really struggling with handling weeds. And the more I started looking at it, the more I thought, you know what, these weeds are changing. They're modifying faster than new chemistry comes out. And we're going to have to do something besides just spraying probably to control them. And so I started with cover crops in the seed corn. You know, when we destroy male, we'd be flying or applying radishes and turnips. I found out, you know, there's nothing left after harvest or in the winter, after wintertime. That all dissolves fast. So last couple of years I grew seed. I had started going to adding rye to the mix, and we had to add a separate trip because we were using 45 pounds of rye plus a bunch of other stuff. And I liked the way that looked, and there was something there. And my big thing was I was tired of the wind blowing, and I was tired of erosion, either wind or water, if you had some slope to the field. And you know, we saw it again this year. We had erosion, we had wind erosion. I had neighbors with soil moving, and none of mine was. Mine will move in the fall before the rye gets up out of the ground, because the drill does kind of fluff it a little bit. And if you don't get a nice rain or snow on it, you can have it move a little bit. But in the spring, nothing's moving because it's growing and getting big, and that was my main goal. And then what we found was that residue's holding weeds down, slowing them down, helping eliminate some. And the other side benefit we're finding in the soybeans is white mold is really struggling to do anything here. This field has not had a fungicide application or an insecticide application. The only insecticide and fungicides would be in the strips that are full treatment. Otherwise, the rest of the field doesn't have any of that in. And my agronomist was in it yesterday and has no report of white mold yet. So those are where we're going.
Yep. Okay, so that was the impact of utilizing, like planting into green, utilizing rye in different ways. What about the work with biologicals? You said you've been doing that over a couple of years. Boy, what a couple of trial years, one wet, one dry. But I guess since you've started to do that, what have you noticed? What types of biologicals are you using, and what have you seen?
Yeah, I'd been wanting to use Heads Up, which is for white mold and SDS. And that was one of my main goals to get out here. And I ended up buying my own seed treater 2 years ago. And I used that along with some my own inoculant that the company that I bought the treater from, what they sell, plus VPH 100 and Engage, which is another one they sell. And that was really what I was wanting to do. I was wanting to add that biological for the white mold and SDS to see if that would help. And you know, last year I sprayed half of one field because that field has historically been really hot for white mold, and I didn't spray anything else. And we had a little bit late in some spots. You can see at harvest time a few little spots here and there in different fields, but everybody else was spraying it and I wasn't. And I have a theory on a lot of things that we can't wait on nature anymore to solve, you know, like bugs and problems. We go out and we kill everything. Well, we're killing all the beneficials seem to die a lot easier than the bugs that can cause problems. And so we take those things out right away, and they are usually a one, maybe 2 cycles a year, where the pest bugs are multiples. And so once they get going, you're just screwed, and you'll end up spraying them again if you have to. And I've been trying to avoid that, trying to see if we can get around that. You know, we ran the test last year with 3 hybrids, 3 maturities, 2 different companies, and the biological was 1/10 of a bushel less, but the ROI was, you know, better for the. Plus, I had no poisons in the field.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I wanted to kind of wrap up with is, you know, farming differently the way that you've described. How does that affect how you operate, just how things go during the year, but then also the profitability at the end of the year.
It's well, somebody helped me figure out the marketing side. My profitability a whole lot better, I think, after this year. But the one thing for me is really trying to relax and give the covers time to grow. I've also, with my corn, I'm planting everything green. In the rye, if it's going into corn, it's got hairy vetch in there too. And so my corn, I'm not planting till May 8th, May 9th. Beans, my goal this year was to start on the first insurance day. It was raining, and so we got backed up. I think this field was planted May 9th. And I think we had rain that night, actually. Or no, we had rain when I tried to roll it. So I rolled the cover down here too. I sprayed it first because I have trouble. I don't think it's thick enough, and the timing is really tough to get right to kill it with a roller crimper. But I did roll this whole field because last year, the first time I've had the rye didn't melt to the ground, and I had to run a 1.5 foot tall rye through the combine, which slowed things down and dirtied it up
considerably. Yes.
But I planted everything green. I really don't want to kill the crop early because it flows through the planter pretty well when it's green. If you catch a rain after you killed it, you can turn it in a rope, and that doesn't cut very well. So the goal is to plant it green and then spray it afterwards. Which the beans we wait and spray it when we have time, usually after corn, because most of my corn is non-GMO too, so I'm out on the edge a little bit. I've got rye growing with non-GMO corn started in the ground underneath, and so if you miss the window, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
I can still roll it technically, but it won't kill it all probably. We did spray a couple of fields. It got too wet to get in. We did spray a couple of fields with drones to get the rye killed because it was just too wet to get the big sprayer in the field. So I've done that. But yeah, yield-wise, I haven't really, as far as I know, haven't really seen a yield hit. This field last year, we had a late tornado, we think, or a really strong wind. A neighbor lost a shop. Another neighbor lost a couple towers on a pivot. I had some spots in the field here and on a couple others where it was just flat out in the middle. Field still averaged, 262, but the corners were 119 in that drought, and it had an interseeded cover crop growing in it, which was good in the dryland corners. But the areas where the corn was good and standing, we were in the 260s, 270s, non-GMO. So I don't think we're taking a hit there. Beans, from what I could tell from the neighbors, I'm trying to plant the beans earlier, but it just didn't work this year. Last year was the 2nd of May. I think we finally got started. Same thing, you plant on the date and then the weather changes. And so the biggest thing is patience.
Yep.
And it's really tough when your neighbors are running and your neighbor's corn's been in the ground for almost a week before you start, or a month, before you start. And bean-wise, I'm trying to get going about the same time, or close to the same time most of the guys are, but corn, I'm waiting longer, and it's trying to wait when everybody else is rolling or when they're finishing and you're just starting kind of thing.
But you're finding a way to do it for yourself, and that's what counts. So.
Well, yeah, it's a little different. Most people drive by and go, well, is he farming this year? Is something happened? Is it going to go in the ground? Is it in the ground? We can't tell.
We can't tell. That's all of that biomass on top.
Yeah,
what are you going to do?
Yeah, I was in, the goal was, no higher than waist tall rye planting corn, and this year it got to shoulder high.
Yeah.
Because of the rain, and it was 5 foot, and I've been trying for 3 years or 3 or 4 years. I've had 5 different closing wheels on the back of my corn planter, trying to see when one would have problems, and I found it this year.
Yeah.
And we ended up having to change our closing wheels to make it work.
Well, hey, you learned something, if nothing else.
You definitely do.
Yep.
You definitely learn something, and sometimes you go, oh, that wasn't good.
Nope.
That didn't work out right. But as long as you get through it, and we haven't lost any crops because of it. I think we haven't lost any dirt compared to some of the other stuff. So I'm feeling pretty good about it.
All right, Scott, thanks for visiting with us. Scott Richert is a host of the Nebraska Soybean Management Field Days, again hosted by Nebraska Extension and the Nebraska Soybean Board.